Hello there, welcome to episode 6 in the Dan the Composer at the Piano podcast series. I have been making a list of 10 kind of provocative questions that I may have used as titles for videos. But since I don't like to be provocative, let's call them challenging questions, or questions that you might ask yourself about your progress. And I thought that instead of making a video about them, I could make it into an episode for you to listen to instead of having to look at your phone or computer. And hopefully it will motivate you, no matter your level, no matter your path, no matter what you're working on. It will hopefully give you a bit of a motivation, a bit of a kick. So the first question I came up with was, why are you still stuck at the same level? I think that's a good question. It's not too provocative. Why are you stuck at the same level? A lot of these questions lean towards major scale mastery, as I've talked about in many of my videos. If you don't know the major scale shapes, you're missing out on so much ease on your journey. Melodies are based primarily on major scale notes. Chords are built from the notes of the major scale. Chord progressions are based on major scale numbers, on the degrees of a major scale. Improvising is made easier by being orientated in a key, so you can see where the note values are. Fancy jazz chords are based on notes of the major scale. I said improvisation. Everything jazz, everything classical, all comes from major scales. I guess the big one when it comes to major scales would be orientation at the piano itself. You just feel that you're in a key and everything makes sense. All the chords are diatonic to that key most of the time. So going back to this question, why are you still stuck at the same level? Often, people might think that that means technical ability, but even major scales can be used to develop your dexterity, your precision, your hand independence, your endurance, so many things. So, no matter what you're working on, definitely a very good idea to just once and for all, I have a playlist on this, I have a couple of videos on major scales, to get them down. But let me try and answer it in a bit more detail. Let's just say you're working on some Chopin or some classical music, Debussy or something. You're stuck at the same level primarily because you don't, apart from major scales, secondarily let's say, because you have been convinced that playing the piano or any instrument, let's focus on piano, comes in grades. And I've always been against grades. I call it the fallacy of grades, whereby you believe that you should start in grade 1 and go to grade 2, go to grade 3. But I've been against this for 25 years. And I have a lot of proof and a lot of evidence. And I've had a lot of conversations with people over the decades who have followed certain courses, certain grades, and it doesn't really mean anything. I know people who are grade 8 who don't know all their major scales, which might sound unbelievable, but they just spent most of their time reading music and they have no sense of personal fingering, of orientation in the keys, of note values. They can't make jazz chords, they can't improvise. But of course they have a very good finger independence, very good fingering abilities, but they're not natural because they're following often what the lead sheet says. So in a way they've been forced into a shape which is very unnatural based on these books, forcing them in a direction and playing music which the books tell them is their level. And I've always been against that. I would help somebody if they wanted to learn to play a very complicated piece. Let's just say a traditional grade 6. So let's just say something that's maybe in a slightly less common key and requires, a pretty good amount of finger independence. Even if they had only been playing the piano for a couple of months, I would be more than happy to take on a student or anybody, a friend, to take on that piece. Why? Because every piece contains elements which can apply to any other piece. In other words, you should see music as a technical exercise which just sounds very pretty. In fact, Chopin and Liszt and all those kinds of composers wrote etudes with specific emphasis on certain techniques. They just made it into a very pretty piece of music. Whereas, let's just say the music wasn't the primary point, it was the exercise. So often you'll get stuck at your level because you'll just keep saying to yourself, I'm just a beginner, I'm not allowed to play that piece. I'll never be able to play that piece, because it's too advanced. Absolutely not. Every piece can be used to be dissected so that you can then, it might take you 6 months, okay, but on that journey of dissection, you can learn lots about the score, some sight reading, symbols on the sheet music, whatever the left-hand pattern is that's used in that composition. You can spend some time doing that in different keys, finding your natural fingering, moving around the piano. You can learn how to internalize a score away from the piano, develop your internal piano. So you shouldn't be wasting really your time, or spending too much time rather, on these traditionally easier pieces, because you're holding yourself back, and it's not usually your dexterity which is holding you back. At the end of the day, everyone can wiggle their fingers. You just have to wiggle them in the right places. And going back to major scale mastery, that will help you to wiggle your fingers in the right place, because most of the chords and most of the melody are based on notes of the major scale. So it's going to give you a big boost once you've honestly really got those major scale shapes down, to be able to approach more complicated pieces and to practice more complicated techniques, rolling arpeggios, leaps, octaves, trills, these kinds of things, quick chromatic runs. You can still practice those as part of a more advanced piece, which is way above your level, but it's pulling you up to its level rather than repelling you and saying, no, stay away, you're not good enough yet. So to conclude the answer to that question, why are you still stuck at the same level? It's because it's where you think you belong. And I'm telling you that you're incorrect, and that you do belong. You are allowed to approach traditionally more advanced pieces. In other words, generally that means there are more notes per bar. That's generally what it means, isn't it? On the page. More ink. But you're still allowed to approach those pieces cautiously, okay, and study them, dissect them before you even try to play them. Imagine what the left hand is doing. Follow the notes, see the patterns, try and find a chord progression, see what key it's in, see the major and minor triads, and just gently introduce yourself to the piece. And it will be kind to you. It wants to be played. It's not going to turn you away. So maybe consider this an opportunity to approach these more advanced pieces. My answer was there more emphasizing classical music and sheet music. But even when it comes to jazz, you might just be playing the more common songs like Fly Me to the Moon, or anything with just a 6-2-5-1 progression, or even just a simple blues with a 1-4-5 progression. But there are lots of other very pretty songs with very nice chord progressions that you might think are more advanced. But at the end of the day, the chord progression just comes back to that major scale mastery. So a nice song like My Romance, I learnt that in the key of B flat about 20 years ago. And the chord progression very basically in the beginning is just 1, 2, 3 minor, or flat 3, let's say, 2, 5, 1. So B flat major 7 up the B flat major scale. And because I know B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, it's just going to go, it follows the diatonic chords. B flat major 7, C minor 7, D minor 7, drops back to D flat as a whole diminished, and then 2, 5, 1. So C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7. And then it goes up a fourth, which always happens in jazz, up to E flat quickly. And then it goes on and on. So that's not a 2-5-1 progression, or 6-2-5-1. That's 1, 2, 3, flat 3, 2, 5, 1. Start with that song. It's just a chord progression based on the major scale. So don't be intimidated. And if you're looking at playing more fancy chords, the extensions are simply numbers of the major scale. You want to play C13, you'll play in some way C, E, G, B flat, and put an A on the top. A is the 13th, or the 6th, if you want to find it quickly. So you put an A on top. So everything is just from the major scales. So I think this is a pretty good answer for 10 minutes. Why are you stuck at the same level? Hopefully you get the idea. Major scale mastery, and feel welcome with more advanced pieces, because really they're not that hard. Whoever composed the piece, going back to classical, still had 5 fingers on each hand and was a human. So if it could be written, it could be played 99% of the time. Of course, there's a couple of crazy exceptions. So my second question is, well, not question, the statement, provocative statement, was stop lying to yourself. You are not practicing enough. I wonder if you're practicing enough. Practicing, of course, when you're following my philosophies, doesn't mean only at the piano. So I'm going to actually answer this question, I think, in a more away from the piano way. Are you using your internal piano? Because whether you're learning jazz progressions, jazz chords, major scales, classical repertoire, whatever it might be, you can be doing, or listening to songs to get them on your internal jukebox, All of that takes place away from the piano, doing your finger stretches and exercises, as I've demonstrated in some videos. That's all away from the piano. Listening to music happens anywhere. Playing major scale tennis in your mind. You think of a number and you say the answer. So, for example, you start on C and you'll just, or ask somebody else to say, use a random number generator to say any number between 2 and 7, because 1 is the root, of course. So in the key of C, you'll say the number 5 might come out, or someone says it, or you think it, and that would be G. And you need to see that G from C as a fifth. But the next number that comes out must be within the key of G. So the answer is the new key. So it's to say 3, and you'll go B, because B is a third of G. So B now becomes the new key. And then the answer might be 6. Well, that'd be G sharp. I'm doing this while I'm talking and walking around, so I'm nowhere near my piano. It's on the internal piano. So that would be G sharp, or because G sharp is in a key, you'd have to change the answer to be A flat, and then answer in the key of A flat, because G sharp is a theoretical key. So if the answer was something with a D sharp, let's say the third of B, you'd switch that over to E flat, because D sharp isn't a regular key, it's a theoretical key. You can read about theoretical keys on Wikipedia. So are you playing that game? Are you drilling those major scale shapes away from the piano? Probably not. Are you seeing chord templates in different keys? Let's do some diminished right now. Can you see the chord of F diminished? Do you know the template? There's only maybe 8 templates that you need to know. You can go all the way up to maybe 16 templates if you wanted. But if you can get down 6, 7, 8 templates, that's probably 90+% of the music you'll ever play. So F whole diminished. What's a whole diminished template? 1 minor, flat 5, 6, but technically in music theory you'd call it a double flat 7, but let's call it 6 for now. So that would be F, A flat, C flat, and D on the top. Could you see that in your mind as I said it? So maybe, if you can, great. So try it in different keys. Can you see E flat whole diminished? Maybe E flat, G flat, A and C. Now these are not memorized. I haven't memorized anything. This surprises people when I tell them this. I haven't memorized the major scale inversions, for example, and all the chord shapes and all the inversions of the chords, all the extensions. I haven't memorized any of those. All I have memorized is the major scale combined with the template in root position. So if we say G minor 7, G, B flat, D and F. I only know that because I can see it on my internal piano, and I know the template and I know the scale of G. So my brain very, very quickly sees G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and lowers the B to a B flat and puts an F on top instead of the F sharp, because it's just G minor 7, not G minor major 7, which would have the F sharp on top. And I could therefore play that in any inversion, B flat, D, F, G, or D, F, G, B flat, or F, G, B flat, D. And I'm seeing those shapes change in my mind as I'm saying them now. So I would assume that maybe you're not practicing that enough, your internal piano stuff. If you're trying to learn songs, are you listening to the original many times? I recommend learning the lyrics along with it. That helps you play the melody correctly. Are you listening to your classical pieces and different interpretations of a piece and identifying which ones you like the most? For example, for me, I will normally try to find an original, which is in jazz normally a singing one rather than an instrumental, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, etc. And then I start to find other interpretations of a song. And I start to realize, by connecting to my musical personality, which maybe I'll talk about later, or basically what you like and why, and I connect with that, and I think, oh, I'm kind of liking this song played a bit more slowly, or I like it as a bossa nova, or I like it with more dark chords or happier chords, or I like it played on a different instrument than the piano. Sometimes that happens. So I've got my own musical personality, and so have you, and that's where our preferences differ. So everything I've been talking about here, also scores. What I was going to say is that everything I'm talking about we haven't even gone to the piano yet. All of this stuff is taking place away from the piano, which is the key. It's a big difference between my teachings and what you'll normally find, especially in books. So if you want to study a score, you shouldn't be going to the piano with a score the same day that you open that score. It should be hours later, meaning a couple of days. If you want to learn a lead sheet, not a lead sheet, it's jazz. Well, jazz as well for lead sheets, you'll internalize the chord progression. But if you're learning something that's scored, you would not maybe go to the piano until you've got the first 8 bars, completely internalized and visualized, then you would go to the piano and play it without the score in front of you. Because when the score is in front of you, it's a big distraction. It's a big conscious interference. It's a very, very dangerous thing to have. It impedes you. So you must do everything you can to reduce conscious interference. So you don't need to do what I call a party trick, where you can just play stuff off the page on the first viewing. But you do have to have the ability to know what the notes are and to imagine your fingers playing it on the piano. So if you spend time studying a score away from the piano, before you go to the piano, and then not putting that score in front of you when you do go to the piano, you'll be very surprised how fluently you can play it already. Then when you're at the piano, of course, and you are playing it, you'll start to refine your natural fingering and you won't be distracted by the score. Sometimes the scores tell you what fingers to use. It is recommended fingering and it's not strict fingering, but it can be distracting and people can start to think that it really is the actual fingering that you should be using. Natural fingering all the way. So that question was, stop lying to yourself, you're not practicing enough. Well, that statement. So think about it. Are you spending enough time away from the piano practicing? Because that's going to help you the most. When you're at the piano, to finish answering this question, a lot of your practice should be done staccato without the pedal, because the pedal hides laziness. Staccato doesn't. You can hear every individual note. Try to do as many things as you can with your eyes closed or with a blindfold or in a dark room. This enhances your feel, your orientation. You can work on your touch and dynamics, play things in different keys if you're in jazz to reinforce a chord progression numerically. So like I said earlier, that My Romance one, can you remember that chord progression? It was 1, 2, 3, minor, 2, 5, 1 in B flat. So maybe you might practice that in the key of G. So you'll play G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, B flat, hold diminished for the minor, and then A minor 7, D7, G major 7. So I've just practiced it there in the key of G. And you can do that at the piano as well as away from the piano, of course. So a lot of your practicing isn't only playing the piece. And that's a mistake that many people make. They just keep playing the pieces that they know and making very, very tiny progress. So I would probably say I like the 80-20 balance. So even if you do want to spend 80% of your time playing the piece and working on it, sure. But give time to finger independence, endurance, precision, hand independence, because these things are behind every piece of music and often they're neglected. And of course, spend a lot of your time, in terms of 80-20, I would say spend 80% of your time away from the piano, which is kind of normal anyway, because most people are spending 80% of their time away from the piano every week. It's very difficult to sit in front of the piano for many hours every day. So the third one was another provocative statement. The reason you'll never be a great pianist. I like these challenging statements because I'm using them in an encouraging way. I went through these kinds of questions myself. That's why I've come up with them. The reason you'll never be a great pianist, it doesn't mean that you won't be, because I'm going to add a little extra bit to this statement. Let's just put it in brackets. The reason you'll never be a great pianist is because you're not doing this. So what is this? You're not following your path. You're following the path that other people think you should be taking. Even with the goodness of their hearts, they might be recommending you take a route and believe that it's going to be good for you. Maybe it will be, but it may only take you 30% of the way, and you'll never go beyond that. You're following books, and you're learning pieces, and you're even doing certain exercises from certain places, which have got nothing to do with your journey. So you have to become authentic, and you can only become authentic through self-analysis. And that's what I was talking about earlier, the musical personality. Great pianist has many different meanings for many different people. It doesn't just mean we all become Liszt or Chopin. It basically means you reach your pinnacle. And other people would say you're doing very, very well and admire you greatly for what you're doing, what you're able to do. So to become a great pianist, to become you, the best pianist that you can literally become, will only happen if you accept and acknowledge, well, at first acknowledge and then accept, because sometimes you don't want to accept, but you must. Your natural path, your natural limitations, what you really like, what you really want to do, what you want to play, what you like listening to, who you want to play for, what genre. Do you want to play in a band or not? Do you want to play solo or not? Do you want to be in Carnegie Hall or the Royal Albert Hall in London? Or do you want to be in a pub pop music band? I'm not putting that down, I'm just contrasting. Do you want to become a composer? Many different paths. And each path has different requirements. You all have to know the major scales, and you all need finger independence to a point, And you all need to know the most common chords, majors and minors and sevenths and things. So you can't really get away from that no matter your journey, no matter your ambitions. But I'm quite sure that many people, that if 1 million people listened to this, I would comfortably say that at least 70 or 80% of you are on the wrong path. You might be doing well on the wrong path, but you would go further doing well on the right path. So give a good look to what repertoire you're working on, what the books are telling you that you should be doing, in what order, especially grades. Try 3 grades ahead. If you're doing grade 3, jump into grade 6. You'll be surprised. The difference is not that vast. And if you spend a lot of time doing all the technical exercises and thinking in the way that I talk about, because I'm not talking about, what I talk about is for everybody. It's personalizable. So I'm not saying do this and then everyone does it because they're all on the same journey like a book. No, I'm saying do this in your own way. So it might be able to do this exercise, but you only need to do it with the right hand. Do this exercise, but you should be able to do it with both hands at 180 beats per minute. Somebody else, I might say, do this, but only worry about it in the key of C and F and G. You see? Somebody else, I might say, do this and that, but you should be able to do it at 250 beats per minute, like so fast you almost don't need a metronome, and you should be able to do it in all 12 keys with your eyes closed, both hands parallel. Other person, I might say, don't bother with that exercise. It's not for you. You don't need it. You see? So everyone's different. Even if they can still do same or similar exercise, it's personalizable in terms of tempo, which hand, which keys, where on the piano, for how long you should be doing technical exercises. Some people really need to work on endurance and increase their stamina and be able to play long pieces with very strong fingers. And other people, they'll be fine with playing C, F and G7, and that's enough for them with a simple left-hand accompaniment. It's a big difference between that and something by Rachmaninoff or something. It's a big difference. So acknowledge and accept your musical personality. I fear that too many people are working on the wrong repertoire and that you're doing the wrong technical exercises. Or you're doing the right technical exercises, but not in the right way. You're not pushing yourself enough with them. So there's lots of personalization involved in my philosophies. As I've always said, play you. So I hope that this gives you a little kick in the direction of personalizing your journey and being a bit more authentic, because that's how you will be a great pianist. No book was written for you. The goal is to not copy somebody else's journey and have the same goals and ambitions as them. It's always going to be more personalized. My next statement says, you're playing the same thing over and over. This is why you're not improving. Many pieces, let me start with jazz. Often you'll get to the point where you've learnt the piece, you've learnt the basic major and minor triads. Maybe you don't have such a good sense of rhythm, but you can still play the chords in the right order. Maybe you've identified the melody, and you can generally sit down and play that piece. And you're always going to play that piece the same way for the next 10 years because you're not experimenting with it, you're not pushing yourself, because you keep playing the same piece over and over. This is not even about adding repertoire. This is about the same piece, or even the same exercise. You might be doing the same 2 exercises, but you're always doing them, let's say in the same place on the piano. And if you're using a metronome, you're always doing it at 110 beats per minute because it's comfortable, it's safe. There's a nice quote by Van Gogh. It goes something like, I like to practice what I can't do so that I can then be able to do it. something like that. So if you're doing some technical exercises, push the metronome by 40 beats per minute. Do it with an octave between the hands instead of right next to each other. Do it with your eyes closed. Do it in a different octave completely. Do it in a different key. Use different fingering. If you're playing a song, try it in a different rhythm. If you are playing, maybe you're playing the same Chopin piece or Debussy piece or Mozart piece, which is maybe not too complicated because they did write some simple pieces they wrote, less demanding. So find another piece which you feel is at the same level. I always recommend pushing yourself, but at least have some kind of diversity in your playing, because the diversity will help you with improving your command over the piano, because you'll have more experiences in different places, different shapes, different finger patterns. So try not to get too stuck just because it's comfortable. And I was going to say that if you're doing jazz stuff, try to add a major 7 to a 1 chord or to a 4 chord, which should be major 7 normally. If you're playing a minor triad, try to add the flat 7 on top, just to add that extra slight quality of improvement. Just make it sound a bit nicer. Instead of playing the melody directly, completely correctly as it should be, as if it were a fixed Chopin melody, it's jazz. So change it a little bit. Put in a little chromatic note here and there, a little passing tone. Change the melody a tiny bit. Maybe try play it a bit faster. Maybe use a left-hand stride instead of just holding the hand in one same place. Try to put the bass note and come up to the chord. Maybe play the melody in octaves instead of just single notes. So just try to make these tiny improvements instead of just playing the same thing that you know you can play. And as I say, the same with the exercises as well. Just try to push them and play them in a different way. A bit of variety, and you'll become very, very good. My next statement was, you are not practicing efficiently. Here's how you can fix it. I think efficiently means in the best way for you. I think that the word efficient is different for different people. So I would recommend finding your natural limit. This is a really, really nice word I came up with. Well, 2 words, I guess. Natural limit. You put a metronome on, you do the technical exercise, or you play the piece, or you play through the chord progression, or whatever it is, at a speed where you don't need to think about doing it, and you don't miss a note. Now that might be really slow at 50 beats per minute, but it doesn't matter, because you can do it at that speed, and that's satisfying. You can say, well, I can play it, or I can do the exercise at 50 beats per minute, click, 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 without thinking. Increase it by 10 and maybe be able to do it 3 times at that new speed, the piece or the exercise. Push it another 10 or even 15. Push it another 10. Eventually you'll get to a speed, maybe 90, 100, where you start to stumble. Keep the metronome there until you don't stumble. That's a very efficient thing to do because you are pushing yourself to be able to do something and reduce conscious interference at the same time. Really, really important. Efficiently also involves not looking at the piano. Again, I come back to this blindfold thing or closing your eyes if you have that discipline, because it's increasing and improving your precision. Very, very important. I always sit in front of the same note, which is the middle D. So if I just stretch my arms out anywhere and put my fingers into some shape, I know exactly what notes they'll be over with my eyes closed because I've always sat in front of the same note. It doesn't take too long to be able to do that. This is not something that took me 20 years or more. This is something that you'll surprise yourself at how easy this is once you keep sitting in front of the same note. So practicing efficiently, eyes closed, and finding your natural limit and increasing it, and pushing it, sitting in front of the same note, just being orientated at the piano. Otherwise you'll get lost. You'll start to play wrong notes, which you might think is a technical deficiency, but it's not. Like I said earlier, your fingers can wiggle very easily. They just have to wiggle in the right places. And why not make that easier for yourself by always going to the same place when you sit down? So your hands just become, oh, I know where I am. It just feels so much more fluent. You feel like you have more control over the piano. And your fingers just fly over it because they know where they are. So that's a couple of nice words on efficiency. Oh, and also avoid energy puddles. Sit higher and sit further back, so that your wrist is a little bit below your elbow, and the first knuckles are a tiny bit below the wrist, and the next knuckles are a bit below those, and the fingertips are the lowest of all. That may only be a 1 or 2 degree slope, but you want to avoid anywhere where, if you imagine water trickling down, it won't form any puddles. That's what I mean by energy puddles. It will just flow from your elbow and drip off the end of your fingertips onto the piano. So that's very important as well. My next comment was, you see, I told you in the beginning that a lot of these questions kind of come back to the same kind of ideas. And I found that quite interesting. So that's why I thought, well, I'm not going to make all these different videos. I realized a common theme through these. The next thing I wrote was, you think you're practicing, but are you really? I'll just read the final ones. We don't need to make this too long. So you think you're practicing, but are you really? I'm curious if you might have any thoughts of how you might answer that question. You think you're practicing, but are you really? Do you see how this comes back to all the things I've said before? Musical personality, internal mind stuff, internal piano, internal jukebox, internal manuscript, etc. Next question was, or next statement was, if you're not playing this every day, you're wasting your time. You see how I had this idea of provocative titles without, of course, the intention of being rude. I think that's an interesting one. How would you answer that? If you're not playing this every day, you're wasting your time. What do you think I would answer to that? Major scales should come straight into your mind. I have an old video. I'm going to redo it soon at the time of recording this. So at some point in the middle of 2025, I will re-record my Dan the Composer's piano challenge. And it's a sequence of chords. First of all, it's all the major scales, up and down, both hands, one octave. That's it. Do it as fast as you can. That's it. Very simple. Just be able to do it once and for all with your natural fingering without stopping all the way from C, C sharp, or D flat, D, E flat, E, F, and all the way through. And the next part was to go through a sequence of chords, chord types in each key. So that's something that you should be practicing, because that's going to give you, you'll do it with your eyes closed, of course. Of course. You will do it with both hands. Find your natural limit, try and push it and push it and push it. Maybe get to 200 beats per minute or maybe faster. And you're going to go through the four primary chord types, which means everything, all the combinations of 1, 3, 5 and 7 within the octave, basically. So major 7, regular dominant 7. So in the key of C, I'll just tell you. So C, E, G, B, C, E, G, B flat. And then to the minor 7, so C, E flat, G and B flat. And then C minor major 7. So C, E flat, G and B. So there's a kind of logical movement of the fingers there. Then you'll go on to the 6th chord. So C, E, G and A. Minor 6, C, E flat, G and A. The E flat being the minor, of course. And then it went to whole diminished. So C, E flat, G flat, A. So you just moved the G down to G flat. And then the C half diminished. So C, E flat, G flat, B flat. The A moves up. And then I think it finished on an augmented. So C, E, G sharp. And you can put a B flat on top of there if you want, because normally an augmented goes with the flat 7. It will be written as like C7 plus. Plus means augmented, or C7 AUG in brackets, augmented. You might see C aug 7 or C plus 7 or C7 plus, C7 aug, these combinations. Sometimes you literally see sharp 5, C7 sharp 5. So it's that sequence. That's something worthwhile, because that makes you have endurance, precision, your eyes are closed, nice little finger workout as well. There's a fluency thing, you can emphasize dynamics in it. You can do it in different places on the piano, different octaves apart. And naturally, you're going through all the keys with all the chords that you'll ever use. It's extremely beneficial. Any classical music that you ever play, 80+% of that music, classical here, including Bach and Mozart, going back even further, Baroque, etc. It's majors and minors. It's just major and minor. All the jazz stuff, well, Liszt and Chopin, they would occasionally use diminished chords and half diminished chords. You get the occasional augmented chord. And in jazz, of course, you get all of those plus a few others. So why not just go through them all? Just go through them all. It's very satisfying to know that you can do that. So that was that statement. So the statement there was, if you're not playing this every day, you're wasting your time. So that would be that, to be honest, my Dan the Composer piano challenge, really. Major scale mastery again. 2 more. I wrote, still playing easy pieces, here's why you'll never improve. I've kind of talked about that, I guess. It's a bit similar to a question from earlier, which was, you're playing the same thing over and over. But this time I wrote it as, so you're still playing easy pieces, here's why you'll never improve. Again, I wanted to emphasize this idea of not avoiding more complex pieces, because you don't need to. You're good enough to approach. And I'm talking to lots of different people here, but you specifically are able and good enough to play more advanced pieces than you have currently been playing. I assure you, when you come to the piece with major scale mastery, finger independence, precision, and having studied the score, having put the piece on your internal jukebox because you've listened to the original, if it's in jazz, or a classic recording if it's a classical piece, and a really famous piece recorded, and this is the definitive version. Anyway, you've really got the piece on your mind, you've studied the score, and you've really, really taken the time to do so many things before you go to the piano. You're going to get better. You're going to find pieces very easy, no matter what their traditional level is. And trust me, online, there are lots of arguments on different piano forums of which pieces should be at which grade. People say that grade 6 pieces should really be grade 8 because da-da-da-da. Other people say that this grade 7 piece is too easy, it should be grade 5 because it's not that hard. All these different arguments. I mean, don't forget, it's only a couple of organisations, associations that have decided the grading of these pieces. It's not carved in stone, And everyone has different abilities and skills and can pick up pieces more easily, more quickly. Everyone's got a slightly different way of playing and can find things easier than other people. It's very hard to say that piece is hard and that piece is easy. That piece should be grade 3, that piece should be grade 7. No. It really is nonsense, and I'll always stick by that. So that statement was still playing easy. Are you still playing easy pieces? Here's how you'll never improve. So stop restricting yourself and being afraid of these more advanced pieces. Final thing, stop avoiding your weaknesses. You should face them, or you'll never make progress. And again. Major scales. I guarantee if I could find 100,000 of you and you tell me that you know your major scales, I'm quite sure that more than 50%, maybe even 80% wouldn't really. If I said that you had to say the notes of every major scale, 1 note per second, all the keys, even when it can be 2 keys like C sharp and D flat or F sharp and G flat, I do challenge you to be able to do that by saying it every second. So key of D. I'm saying it every person. I can say it quicker, but every second. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Next key, E flat, F, G, Key of E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp. 1 note per second from C to B, all the keys, without hesitating, because you just know the next note automatically. That's where you should be, and it doesn't take long to get there. So I'm going to say that major scale mastery is a weakness for probably 90+% of the people that watch my stuff. And I'd even say anyone in the piano world who doesn't know my stuff but is playing the piano. And like I said, I've known people who are high-grade pianists or can play concert level stuff, and they don't truly know the major scales. And we've laughed about it. It's like they learnt them for the exam as a muscle memory sequence. And that was it. They didn't appreciate the number values, the intervals, the feeling of each interval and its meaning, how the note G feels like the third in the key of E flat. It just feels like the third. It just belongs there. It's just sitting between that G flat and A flat. It's just sitting in there nicely in its third position, the G. But when it's in the key of A flat, it's a major 7. So it feels very far away from the A flat, from the root. It's that sad note, the major 7. It's not near the home. It's not a happy, safe major third. Suddenly a distant, longing, sad, almost melancholic major 7. Yet it's the same note, G. What else could it be? In the key of B, it's the augmented. So you play B, D sharp, G, it's an augmented. So now the G isn't even in the key of B. It's a sharp 5. It's not even in the key anymore. It's an accidental. It's out the key. And it wants to go somewhere. It's made the whole chord unstable. It wants to go somewhere. Normally it wants to go up a 4th. The B augmented would want to go up to the E. So that G has been a happy third, has been a melancholic major 7, and is now a tensiony, unstable, augmented, the sharp 5 in the key of B, and yet it's the same note. So it's all well and good saying, I know my major scales, but do you really? So major scales, I'll always say, is a weakness. The second thing I would say is probably a weakness, is your rapidity, which doesn't mean playing fast. It means that you can do a technical exercise with such fluency that your fingers aren't even thinking about speed. You can just go up and down, or you can do some alternating finger thing or some chromatic thing, whatever it is, even rapid arpeggios, just up and down, any key, just having that fluency. It's not about playing fast at all. So I would say that your rapidity and your major scales are probably significant weaknesses, as well as, therefore, not stumbling. So in other words, stumbling would be a weakness because you're hesitating over maybe what's the next chord in a jazz song. Well, if you'd mastered the chord progression away from the piano, which would be easy because you know your major scales, you wouldn't be hesitating because you would know that progression. Let's go back again to that My Romance chord progression. I've done it twice in this episode. Do you remember what it is? 1, 2, 3, minor, 2, 5, 1. So because you know that, you won't hesitate when you're actually playing it at the piano, especially when you've mastered it in a particular chosen key, whether it's the original or not. Let's do it. Earlier we did it in the key of B flat, then I demonstrated it in the key of G. Let's do it, I'll keep it simple. Let's go to the key of C. So 1, 2, 3, so C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, E flat whole diminished, 2, 5, 1, D minor 7, G7, C major 7. So you would drill that in your mind, see the notes that you would play. Imagine your hand on the piano. And when you are sure that you know that, forget the melody, that comes last. in jazz. When you know it, go to the piano and play it. Play it through a few times, discover what natural fingering works for you, and it's done. You're reducing conscious interference. You can focus on the right hand now. You can focus on a bit of improvising. You can focus on embellishing the chord. You can maybe play some inversions because you're not thinking, oh, what's the next chord? What's the next chord? So that's a very important thing that is probably a weakness. Your internal piano usage. So that gives us internal piano usage, major scales, your rapidity in your fingers, which doesn't mean just playing pieces quickly. It's a fluency, the independence of the fingers. So that was the last sentence, provocative sentence that I wrote. And I really hope that you can see the common theme through these kinds of questions. I could come up with maybe 10 more and the answers, or you could ask me questions. In a way, I want it to be that you don't really have any more questions in terms of motivation, because you know that I'm just going to eventually somehow come back to how are your major scales? How's your internal piano? How's your internal jukebox? Have you studied the score away from the piano? Have you done the technical exercises with your eyes closed, and have you found your natural limit, and have you pushed it by 60 or 80 beats per minute? Have you done all the chords from the Dan the Composer Piano Challenge? Or do you at least know majors and minors, at least major and minor triads in all the keys? Can you imagine note values in major scales? Play major scale tennis? Feel the note values as they change in different keys? Like I was just talking about, G is the third of E flat, the seventh of A flat, the sharp 5 in the key of B, the fourth in D, the minor in E, etc., etc. You know, every note has a value in a different key, and that's only known because you know the major scales. So I think whatever question you ask, you can probably predict my answer, and I probably have a video for that. So I think I can draw this episode to a close now. It was enjoyable to talk about these things and to have composed these questions, and I really hope that it has motivated you and that you're going to. Oh, maybe the other thing is that, are you on a true journey? Are you playing you? Are you doing technical exercises which are applicable to your journey? Are you playing repertoire that you really want to play? Many people have given up the piano because they don't like the music examples in the books, or they don't like the pieces they need to prepare for the exam. What a shame. There's probably loads of pianists who would have been really good if they had done what I say and stopped adhering to these graded concepts, found their natural musical personality, and started to acquire what they need when they need it on their own journey. That's how they become a great pianist. And that's different. That's a different answer for everybody. So it's absolutely futile to compare yourself, where you are, how quickly you're moving, what your end goals are. Comparing any of that stuff to anyone else is completely futile, because other people don't have maybe the same lofty goals as you do. Maybe you want to play complicated music on a stage, whereas they just want to be able to play a couple of chords with their local band, or play a couple of songs at Christmas or some family events or in church. And all they need is a couple of major and minor chords in a couple of common keys and a basic sense of finger independence and a couple of maybe chord progressions, maybe a blues scale or two, and that's enough for them. So there's no reason to compare. That's another reason that people often give up, because they don't think they're moving at the right speed, when there is no right speed. There's a U speed, and that's what you need to find. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, a long one, but hopefully motivational. So I will hopefully look forward to seeing you in the next episode, and hopefully you'll enjoy the previous 5. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for listening. All the best. Bye for now.